The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our What's New in Thermal Desktop User Interface. We're breaking this up into smaller segments, so you'll see more What's New webinars coming up. Take a look at our website so you can see what's scheduled and when it's scheduled. We are recording this, so we will be able to send out a link to that recording when we're done. A couple of other things, just wanted to point out, if you want to get our attention, you can either raise your hand or you can ask a question by typing. We have too many people here today to open up the microphones. So unless it seems like there's going to be a complex question, if there is a complex question, we can unmute you briefly for that. But there's too many people just to keep the microphones open. I did put the slides under handouts. So if you look under that in your GoToWebinar interface, you should be able to find that PDF to download. So with that, I'm going to move forward. Can somebody raise their hand if they see my screen with the opening slide? Excellent. Okay. Thank you. So probably the biggest change here is we're working towards a simplified interface. There's a reset user interface command that replaces the reset toolbars. And it will allow you to choose among ribbons, menus, and toolbars. And then that setting is good for you every time you open up Thermal Desktop. And you can even choose subsets. So in the ribbons, there's the thermal and thermal 2, but there's also a fluid ribbon if you do mostly fluids work. So you can choose mix and match, use it how you want to set it up. And for those of you who are newer to our software, it can be a pretty complex interface, but there's also a way to either hide or deactivate commands based on what is in the model. So which commands make sense. So if you look over here, this model has surfaces and conductors, and you see you can turn the visibility off, on and off of those, but there are no pipes or any other fluid objects, so those are hidden, or no, they're deactivated. Personally, I prefer deactivating because my muscle memory can't develop if I'm constantly turning commands on and off. But this hide or deactivation also applies to the model browser list options. So you'll only be able to choose to list in the model browser things that are actually there. Another thing we've added in is a shortcut menu for the graphics area. And this allows you to do some common commands: edit, zoom extents, turn numbers on and off. You can set dialog defaults based on selected objects, and you can reset the user interface, which is what we just talked about. Object identification, we've added a new tab in the preferences dialog for graphics text. You can set a global font and size, but then for each object, you can, or each object type, you can set the scaling of the IDs, you can set the color, and you can show choose what's displayed, where even the first line of a comment is an option for that. So you can see some of the options over here on the right. We've been working for improved solutions. We've added in a new cyclical convert solution. So it'll run so many periods, up to a maximum number of periods, until it converges from one cycle to the next. So you can identify the cycle period, the offset, the convergence tolerance, and the maximum number of cycles you're willing to go to. There's also an option to suppress the output until a post-convergence cycle is run. So you can say add one more cycle after convergence, and then you get all your outputs for the one cycle. There's also a new option to hold tanks or diffusion nodes for a steady state solution if that's needed for initial conditions. Typically, that's more of a fluids type model. We have updated some of the default settings for solutions to address current modeling trends. We've reduced the temperature convergence criteria from 0.01 to 0.001. The ext-lim has been changed. The previous default was too large for finely meshed models that are very common today. And we've also changed the choking in loss type paths and tubes and S tubes for better, which works better for two-phase throats and contractions. There's an option when you first open a model, an existing model in version 6.1, you will see an option that pops up to ask you if you want to keep your old settings or use the new ones. We recommend using the new ones, but if you're not ready to do that at that time, you can cancel. You won't see that every time you open if you save your model. But then you can go back and check to see, what's different from the internal default settings, and then you can also set to those new, those internal default settings at a later time. We've added in programmatic controls for outputs, so you can determine whether or not you suppress outputs to both the save file, the post-processing file, and the ASCII output file. Additional user logic options. We're expanding network element logic. For all nodes, you can now do the volume of the node and the density of the node. And then we've also added keywords for the new objects. And a little foreshadowing, T's, FK locators are some of those new objects that you'll see in the FlowCAD discussion. In the Logic Objects Manager, there is a new look. It's very blank, stark when you first open it. Don't worry, everything's still there. You just use the right click to get to a shortcut menu to create, edit, and do whatever else you need to do within the Logic Objects Manager. Once you have logic objects there, you'll see the tree of objects. To simplify some of your inputs, we have added a pre and post logic form to the array interpolations so that you can then have controls on whether that interpolation is run or not. A lot of people put an if-then statement before in the pre-logic and then an end-if in the post-logic to control whether or not they're going to do those interpolations. But that's not the only option, so you can use whatever you need to before and after. We've also added in Fortran arrays. These can be automatically sized to the model based on number of nodes, number of submodels, number of paths, whatever you want to choose for that. You can do real, integer, and character arrays. And then these can be used with Fortran intrinsic functions for very efficient calculations. I am working on an example to work on finding minimum and maximum temperatures, and you can do that per submodel. So keep an eye out for that to see when that shows up. Within the model browser, we've added some enhancements. There's more objects have been added in the list by options. So TD block references we've added in. If you're not familiar with those, that's an improvement on XREFs. You may want to take a look at that. That was added in a previous version. You can list by fluid flow order. T's, FK locators, those are also new objects. And then the smart annotations, which we added previously, You might also know it as TD text. Those are all listed now in the model browser. We've added in a sub-indent option, so you can see subcategories for objects. So in this example over here, here I have my fluid submodel, and I'm listing by lumps, and it breaks it down by junction, plenum, and tank. So we've got that for most fluid objects, and then heat loads are broken down by constant, time dependent, temperature dependent, and we're expanding that as we go, but those are the things we have so far. There's also a lot more information available in the model browser now. If you select a heater, you'll see all of the heater registers while you're post-processing, so you can see their current value. The symbol tree now displays registers that are found in the solution. So if you do have a heater and you want to plot the current status of the heater as a function of time, you can do that right from the model browser. Symbol comments are now listed with the symbols, and then the heat flow between submodels now allows global to global option, so you can look at that information. Loss prevention and initialization. We've added in an option on the output tab of the case set to create a recovery file. What the recovery file does is it saves all model data every output interval, but it overwrites the previous output so that it keeps the file size small, but then gives you enough information that you can continue a solution after some unforeseen event, such as a power outage, and there's a restart feature that I'll show you here in a minute. The other things you could do with this, let's say you're running a model and at some point there's a strange behavior. You might want to restart right in the middle. Now you could actually, let me get to that here from the initialization. Model initialization has moved from the advanced tab to an initialization tab. So nothing new but the location. Initialization, just to get the terms correct, allows you to reuse values from a previous run even if the model is changed. So that allows you to set node values, also lump values, and path flow rates. A restart, however, continues from a previous solution using the exact same model. Nothing can change in your model, but you can make some slight modifications such as the end time, or let's say you finished a solution and you feel like you probably should have run it a little bit longer. You can do that. And so you can either start from the recovery file, which I just mentioned, or any solution file where you've saved everything into that post-processing file. Few post-processing changes. Resetting the color bars and viewports resizes the viewport to the graphics area. So, and this is basically, if you're using a widescreen monitor, it's very nice. You now get a nice widescreen viewport. You can resize it, and add viewports are still options, but this moves the color bar inside the viewport, and then you have your full screen viewport pretty much. We've added in an option for viewing heat rate between submodels graphically. So if you're familiar with the Simple Satellite tutorial, it tries to find the central point of the submodel and puts a point there, and then it just shows graphically where the heat's flowing and what amount of heat is flowing between each submodel. When you're in the model browser and you're post-processing, you can now sort value lists in the output field. So if you right click, you can sort from min to max, max to min, or maybe alphabetically. We've added in the option to use domain tag sets for the save to text or the write results to text. And since this is now it can be part of the solution, you can now have it generate all this information automatically for you. When animating post-processing, you can optionally scale the color bar to the full range of values for the animation time. So when it's running through the steps, the color bars aren't changing, but all your color contours are. The way it used to do, and it's still an option, is it would scale for each view, so that as you step through time, it would resize the scale color bars. So that's it for the user interface. We've got more What's New webinars scheduled. This Thursday, we have Thermal Desktop and RADCAD. Next Tuesday, TD Direct. Next Thursday, following Thursday, May 16th, is What's New in FlowCAD. And then May 21st, we'll be discussing our API OpenTD. And with that, I'd like to open up for questions. If you feel like your question isn't easy to type, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you if I can, and we can do it that way. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Either I was crystal clear or I was on mute. Oh, here we go. I think I see a question coming up. Okay, the question is, what is the command for resetting the post-processing window? That you'll find under, if you go to the menus, thermal, post-processing, reset color bars. And that's command has been there. It just refreshed everything, but now this time it will now change the size of the graphics area or the viewport. So the now this 6.1 is available now for download. You would have to contact Cindy to get an upgrade license. And with that, when you download that, or if you go to our website and download the manual, in the TD, there's an updates or release notes section. And so you'll get a little more information there. Plus, you'll be able to link to the section of the manual that discusses that new feature. Okay, so someone has asked, where did the drop-down menus go? How do I navigate to that option? So you can either type menu bar and give it a value of 1, or if you right-click and go to, that was on this page. So right-click in the graphics area, you'll find Thermal Desktop, and there should be a, if you have nothing selected, you should see an option for Reset User Interface. and that should allow you to choose menus, ribbons, and toolbars. Jane, did you have a question that came up?
No,
Okay.
I didn't see any other questions.
Okay. Okay, question is AutoCAD 2020 supported yet? Yes, it is. So that right now we haven't had too much testing on that, but it is supported, and that usually goes fairly smoothly. I'm about to get myself set up for that as well. So is the how to do all these things I'm mentioning in the manual? For the most part, yes. If you go into the manual with the 6.1 manual and go to um, the release notes section under 6.1, most of those new features, and there's more than what I've covered here, but most of those features will have a link to the section of the manual that discusses that feature. So you can find out more about that. And we will be going through and making more and more videos of specific features so we can discuss them a little more in depth and show how they're done. So this is more of an overview today.
Hey, Doug, just
Yes.
one point on the AutoCAD 2020.
Yes.
I don't know, we haven't tried that yet. I don't think. On the 2019 though, there were some issues with multiple windows.
That is true. We've noticed that with Windows 10, I think it is. I don't know if it's limited just to Windows 10. Um, and AutoCAD 2019, you can double click a DWG file and it'll open up AutoCAD. But if you have AutoCAD open, double clicking on a DWG does not work. We're not quite sure why that's the case. But if you do want to have two windows open with two different models, what you can do is you can open up a new instance of AutoCAD by going to AutoCAD and launching AutoCAD, and then go to open and then point to the file you want to open. Not quite sure why it doesn't let you double click, but it does do it does still let you open up multiple windows.
Yeah, and that our developers are still looking into that, I believe. I'm not sure what the status is on that, but if you go to our system requirements, you'll see that we don't state that we support 2019 yet. And that's really the primary reason.
Okay. I know I've been asked to start working with 2020, so I guess we'll say that it's supported tentatively. So maybe that's not a hard firm yes on that.
I think that was all your questions there, Doug.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. Don't hesitate to ask questions later. You can write to support@crtech.com. And then keep an eye out on our website for the other What's New webinars coming up. And registering, we'll get you the link for the recording. If you're not able to make it that particular time, we'll still let you get the recording. So thank you very much.